has this really unique ability to say what needs to be said without words. For myself, growing up, we always had music playing in the home, whether it was classical, whether it was soul, gospel, jazz. It was constantly a wave of sound. And I think there is something so unique about being able to bring this gift of sound to people all around us. So I grew up in Atlanta, and it was a really fantastic, loud and noisy house that I grew up in. My father is a musician, and so growing up, it was going to be very necessary that I would play an instrument, and that my older sister, would also play an instrument. She played the flute. It's small, carried around, throw it in the car. For me, I started on violin. I started on violin when I was 4 years old, very young, and I started with a method called Suzuki. So you start playing by ear. As a young child, I learned that music was not my own, that music was something that I studied and learned, but it was for the community, and it was meant to be shared amongst the family, but also amongst the village and community. Starting on harp at 12 is a little bit late in some senses in the kind of conservatory world. Usually people start very, very young. And so I had to really give it all that I had in order to sort of make it to that next level as a harpist. It was very interesting, kind of coming from my family of origin, where music was something that instilled excellence, right? It instilled certain disciplines, but it also was from yourself. It was joy. It was, going to my grandmother's church and hearing these sounds of people stomping on the floor and gospel music, and that was all welcome as an instrumentalist. And then I also then started to navigate a different world where it was the notes on the page, where it was, you're expected to perform exactly what you see, and if it is not exactly what you see, that's not good enough, right? If you want to bring your own self to it, a little bit, but not too much. And so it definitely was an interesting world where I would perform really fully as myself in certain spaces. And then there were other spaces where I was trying to kind of conform to what the goal of excellence was. And the reality is, as a Black woman, that goal was never created for me. It was never created with me in mind, right? When these composers were writing this music, they would never in a million years expect for a Black harpist to be interpreting this music. And so I kind of had to make things my own. I think about certain pieces, if there's something that's somber or that's sad, right? A composer from the 1600s may have had a certain impression of what sad was, but for me, my impression comes from, in the pandemic when I couldn't get out of bed after Breonna Taylor was murdered and there was no justice. And so it's finding a way for me to bring myself and my story and all of who I am to this art form that maybe didn't quite expect would have that kind of influence to it. And so I've definitely been always finding a way to weave my own story and my own self into classical and beyond. I wanted to find a way to really find that intersection. What does it look like for me to be fully an artist, to be fully a harpist, but also to have a voice in a space that is fighting for equity for my people? Could I program music by composers of color? Could I collaborate more with artists who are also finding this space around justice? And I realized that as an artist, I had a voice that was necessary, that there was still interest, that there was still passion in this space of using music as a tool for justice and for equity, and that I, as a classical harpist, had something to say. I think the harp is so extraordinary in its construction, in its warmth, in its ability to sort of pierce right into the soul. A lot of times I'm playing events now where people may be doing, for example, like restorative yoga practices, and there's something about the harp that just allows our bodies to release into rest, to release into a certain peace that we wouldn't have access to otherwise. I think the harp, traditionally has been used throughout time. Even griots would have harpists playing as they were telling the stories, as they were telling these history. And for that to be a part of my story too, is to use this instrument to allow people to connect with themselves, allow people to connect with their own stories, and to really become more of who they are, even just through the sounds of this powerful, powerful harp.